Hi, welcome back to the Manufacturing Come Up. I'm Malcolm Greb, your host, and today we have a special guest, Ann Wyatt, president of Ann Wyatt Recruiting. Love having recruiters on the show because, well, they're dealing with getting people jobs and filling jobs on a daily basis. And here we have the owner of the company.
Hey, Malachi, how are you?
How's it going? How are you?
I'm good. It's
You've
good to
been,
be here with you. Thank you for asking me to come to your show. I'm so proud of what you guys are doing. I love your content.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. And us too of what you're doing in the community and really giving back and just helping develop some more of those programs. If you wouldn't mind, can you let people know what you've been working on a little bit?
Absolutely. So I've been working on several different things here in the past few weeks. One of those, which I think is kind of what direction you're alluding to, is developing a workforce development program for a local nonprofit here in Athens. The Family Resource Center of Athens Limestone County, they received a very generous grant from the A Reset Workforce Development Program. Okay. And they really needed somebody to kind of come in and help them with developing like standards and procedures and process flow and some class content material. So I've been very fortunate to be able to work with them on getting some of that material together for them and help kind of roll out that program. So super excited about that. I'm sure that'll be ready to launch in January, but it's a really exciting opportunity for local area employers and also participants that are interested in getting some skills upgrading, because they're, the premise of the program is to really partner with training providers and get some upskilling for the area. So it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a little bit outside of what our podcast is about, but for those individuals who are trying to build out some of these programs, where does this kind of start at? How can a community start to build out some of these type of programs?
Oh, that's a great question. A lot of that comes with grants and receiving grants, and that will come in either from a funding stream derived from the state government or from the federal government. And, it's just about grant writing and submitting those grants and then being selected to facilitate those grants. Gotcha. So if you're interested in developing a workforce program, there is, you got to have a strong grant writer, I would say would be your first. Your Gotcha. First step, somebody that can research all of that and write the grants and proposals and and then build a team around that end goal.
Yeah, because a lot of these grants have kind of specific requirements to them, don't they?
Yes. So this one specifically it's only available to recipients of SNAP, which is formerly known as welfare, if you're familiar with SNAP, and TANF, which is, temporary assistance for needy families. Yep. So that's kind of the premise of the participants. That's a requirement to receive funding for financial assistance for tuition reimbursement, anything like that. But on the flip side of that, that's a very underserved community population. That, if anyone needs the skills development and upskilling, it's probably that population. Yeah. So.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and that's one of the major reasons why we launched this podcast is because I was one of those individuals that kind of came from maybe lower middle class, maybe upper poverty, but, so there was definitely a disconnect of individuals around me that knew much about career paths. And, like you said, these individuals are the people that need to be assisted the most. They need the most information, the most guidance to potentially break that cycle and do more with their life.
Exactly. And I mean, from my personal experience in having this, on the ground, we'll say, perspective, I know it's really easy for people to sit back and say, what happened in someone's life for them to have, or they made bad decisions or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
But really, and something that I learned from developing the grant and kind of meeting with some of the participants initially was, when you're asking these questions and you're getting to know these individuals, there's a lot of underlying factors that I don't think people necessarily realize, like, and we would call those employment barriers, right? Like lack of transportation, or maybe someone is a victim of domestic violence, or maybe someone has a physical disability, like they have problems with their eyesight, and
Mhm.
they otherwise would be fine. But it's
Yeah.
really about identifying those employment barriers for individuals, and then working with them and then your other local area nonprofits and agencies to get them assistance in overcoming those barriers. And once
Yeah.
you do that, you're really solving a core problem and you're not just putting a
Mhm.
band-aid on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the limitations that comes to my mind is maybe people in their younger portion of their life, maybe they were involved in like criminal activity and whatnot. And so like, especially psychologically, they may have had like some, let's say a petty offense, and it's like possession of marijuana or something like that. And so now they think that they can't get a job. And so now they feel like they have this big roadblock, this big barrier. And there are some companies where it will be some limitations, but you also can't have that mindset of like, I'm stuck. I can't do anything else. Like nobody will hire me, because there's a lot of companies out there that will do second chance programs, or not even second chance. They just have a you know what do you call it, like a lower threshold and what they're willing to hire for, or limitations.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of funding to support expungement fairs and other things like that. So if that's something that, has maybe affected you in the past, there's, you really got to look at what's going on in your local area, because there's a really good chance that there's some agency providing some sort of expungement
Mm.
fair where they can actually help you address those.
What for one, the expungement thing, and for two, um these career development programs, how can like somebody go about searching these, right? Because like obviously people are going to be listening across the United States, the world. um how can they go about trying to search and like maybe some keywords or something like that to try to find some of these organizations?
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because it varies. The agency name oftentimes varies from state to state, right? Especially with like government agencies. But here I would start with, if you're looking for a state agency, like a career center is a good solid key
Hmm.
search string. You should be able to find some information about your local area career center, regardless of the name. Here it's called Alabama Works. In Kentucky, it was called the Kentucky Career Center.
Yeah, I think ours
But
is
that's,
Indiana is, I think, work one is what ours is called.
yeah, see, so
One.
you see there's a lot of
Yeah.
varied difference there, but
Yeah.
Career Center is pretty infallible. So I would
Yeah.
start there.
Actually,
And
while we're here on this subject, I don't even know that I've ever mentioned this publicly, but I actually ended up dropping out of high school like 16 years old. And then so I wasn't going to graduate until I was 19. I dropped out at 16. I said, you know what? I'll drop out as long as I get my GED by the time I'm 17. And so I went to like one of those work one, like I think ours was called like the JAG program or something like that. But it was like a GED assistant program. They offered like some benefits, like if you got your GED, they paid you $250. They helped you with like gas reimbursements, like all kinds of cool little like snippets for being able to help you and kind of incentivize you for moving forward with your degree program. And so that's what I ended up doing. I had 17 years old. I had my GED, and um, I actually kind of got a slight bit of a what do you call, like a little hedge on life, because I essentially graduated 2 years sooner than I would have through high school.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as I know, a lot of those GED programs are free too. So, you can there's pathways out there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to get to them. Sometimes it takes, a little bit of research, a little bit of picking up the phone and calling some folks, but there's all kinds of pathways out there. And congratulations and good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. One thing that I definitely want to touch on a lot is like, because of like kind of going through like my weird like career path that I did in the beginning, is it definitely created like more insecurities, right? Like if I would have went through the college or the high school path, graduated, and then like went to like, I don't even want to say a prestigious college, but like a somewhat reputable college. I'm not saying that I didn't go to a reputable college, but like one where you move away from home. It kind of is like more of that college vibe. That like that in itself, I think there's something about that distills like a confidence level in yourself of like, hey, I did this thing. Like it's really kind of funny. Like there's a lot of times where I've literally thought, I'm like, man, I wish I went to college, and I'm like, oh wait, that's right, I have 2 degrees. But it's so weird. But like I've literally thought that a couple times, and I'm like, oh, okay, like yeah. So like I think it's just the moving away from home. It's a much more of an impactful transition in life that kind of creates like a threshold and a milestone that can definitely help psychologically as well.
Maybe I haven't really thought about that. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think for me, when I decided I wanted to go to college, it was more out of teenage angst and rebellion. But
Right.
than it was anything. But then again,
Yeah.
I mean, you think about all of the degree programs that are out there, and then I've got ADD so bad, so I'm over here like, oh, like I think my gym class, you've got to take a gym class.
Yeah.
I think I took horseback riding, and I'm thinking, years later, I'm like, why didn't I go into engineering, or why didn't I, do
Jeez.
something
Yeah.
a little bit more focused, at
Yeah.
the time. Um, yeah. So I think so what I'm saying is I think that there's two sides to the coin, right?
Mhm.
There's advantages, I think, on one, in one sense for either of those things, and then there's cons.
Yeah.
And right now with the current state of our workforce in manufacturing, we've really got to make some leeway for traditional 4-year degrees. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying we need to
Absolutely.
boost that. We need to cut that time process out a little bit, I
Yeah.
guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, 101%. And also too, like going back to like kind of like the community that you're trying to reach out to, and that we're definitely trying to reach out to as well. That community is also more restricted. Like their capability to like go and do a 4-year degree at a non-local college is not really an option, or at least psychologically doesn't feel like an option.
Hmm.
And in a lot of
And
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, that's affecting a whole talent pool. You're missing a whole talent pool,
Hmm.
right? By not offering that. And that's, uh, you know, that's kind of sad.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So since we kind of touched on a little bit on your background, but if you wouldn't mind kind of taking us back to your upbringing and where kind of what brought you to where you're at today.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so I'm in Athens, Alabama now, which is right outside of Huntsville. But I was born and raised in Campbellsville, Kentucky, and that is in central Kentucky. I don't know, with you being in Indiana, I don't know if you're familiar with that part of
Yeah, I've
Kentucky or
heard of it.
not.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. Um, so I was born and raised there, and I guess it was a good childhood. But I remember my parents, they both worked for government, and they were both very much involved in the community. And so I was raised to be very involved in the community
Mm,
by proxy. And then, when I left Campbellsville, I went to Western Kentucky University, got my degree there. I graduated in 2010, and that was kind of during all of the '08 recession and all of that. Of course, in
Mm,
Bowling Green, a lot of the manufacturing was automotive
gotcha.
because, you've got GM, they make the Corvettes there, and then you had supplier companies, kind of around the area. And so that area was hit particularly hard during
Yeah.
that time. When I graduated, I noticed that, people were still kind of out. The economy as a whole there, the local area economy looked very sustainable. So I said, well, maybe I should just stay here. I liked it. So I ended up staying in Bowling Green, and was kind of out looking for, doing the whole job search thing. And I didn't have internet. This is like my favorite story to tell too. So if you've heard this before and you're listening, and I've worn you out with it, I'm sorry. But I didn't have internet because I just graduated college. I was like this poor college kid. And so all the job searching was, of course, done online at that point. And my mom's like, you should go to the unemployment office, use their internet, it's free. So I did, and I went to the career center, well, at the career center, every day to do my job searching. And one day, the front desk receptionist said to me, she asked me, she says, "Do you want my job? I'm leaving." And I said, "Really?" And she was like, "Yeah." No, and so of course I'm like in very much Anne fashion. Said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "Yeah, you know, you are friendly and you help people over at the self-service area, and you're here every day anyway, so you may as well."
Right.
I said, "You know what? You're right. I am here every day anyway." So,
Yeah. Yeah, you
so
passed
that's
the
how I
interview.
started.
You passed the interview. You showed up to work every day.
Right? I mean, I was already showing up. So, yeah, so I started as the receptionist there. I worked through a temp agency called Adecco,
Yep.
and I did that for about a year until I was brought on to the state government in what's called a federally funded time limited position role, which is kind of like a temporary role through government, and
Mm,
then was hired on as the workforce development specialist one, and then left as a workforce development specialist two.
So
But that really instilled a strong belief in workforce development for me,
through that
those
whole
years.
through that whole process was you actually transitioning from different jobs? Because I think you mentioned something about like there was four different positions, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or you
Yes.
transition through like different companies, or like that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, so Adecco is a private company.
Yep.
It's a temp agency, which you would think of as like a temp agency. So I started in that capacity, and then the federally funded time limited position is a little complicated. It is through the state government, but it's federally funded. So that's extra money that the federal government said, okay, here
Gotcha.
is this allotted amount for a position.
Mm,
And then once I was there and a position came open through the state as what we would call like merit in Kentucky, merit status,
mm.
which is a full-time role. So um, I worked still just with the state of Kentucky that entire time.
Same people,
Um,
same organization, kind of the same position for the most part.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I wasn't very good at the unemployment insurance part. I think a lot of my coworkers would attest to that. So, so I did mostly employment services, job placements, job fairs, and got into kind of in the later phase of that, recruiting and labor market information profiles.
Mm, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So that definitely like really built out and like kind of got you prepared for the stage of life you're in now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I left the state because and started recruiting because I did see such an influx of like greenfield sites and all that coming to the area. And it was at a point where I was looking around the unemployment rate and I was looking around the labor market and then I was looking at, the amount of positions coming to the area and I was looking at my employers in the other corner and I was like, guys, um, I think we're gonna need to start bringing some people and that's really kind of what got me interested in recruiting and in the first place, but it was really about sustainability. It was about building a sustainable workforce.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So whenever you kind of what were you doing prior to starting the company that you're at now? Like what did that job kind of look like?
Like day to day.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I did, oh gosh. On Mondays and Tuesdays, I operated a satellite office of our agency in Franklin, Kentucky. And my Franklin people are still very dear to me. I like cherish them. But so I operated an office there independently Mondays and Tuesdays where I would go in, I would essentially see customers all day, either about their unemployment or about job searching. I would also meet with employers there in the local area and work with them on coordinating events. So either we would do like community wide job fairs that was more of like a once or twice a year thing. Or we would do more often, we would do job fairs with just one-on-one employers. So one employer at a time, they come in, they use the space, we block off 30-minute interview slots for them, and then we would call people and get them in for the interviews. All of that while keeping in kind of mind, okay, what is this person's background? What were they doing previously? Would they be a good fit for the position? That kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
that took up a large a large chunk. It was kind of at the point where we were doing multiple events like that a
Yeah.
day.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Wow. What do you think what would be like one of the most valuable things that those services offer that like the department?
At the Career Center?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, really, it's just a very good talent pool, and they have access to everyone in the local area community,
Yeah.
probably at this point. Um, so it's really a great pool for candidates if you are seeking, we're gonna say, if you've got 20 openings for a like a machine operator position, call the career center.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. If you are interested in upskilling your workforce, right? If you will say you're getting like a whole fleet of robots and you're kind of in this process of digitalization and this transition and all of that, call your career center and see what you can do with on the job training, see what you can do with apprenticeship programs, um, see what you can do through WIOA, which is Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. That's WIOA. Call them up and ask them because there's just a lot of funding out there that I think really goes under the radar,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
for opportunities like that.
Yeah, one thing that's in my mind is I think a lot that one of the major issues with like the workforce development things is like so much of the stuff, so many of the things are the awareness of them are in the ecosystem of that facility, right? So if you go to the workforce development center, they they know all the things, right? They have all this information. They can direct you to find these things. But if you don't go down there, a lot of these things can be kind of hard to search and try to find. Like it is probably like one of your best places to go find out about these things and to discover these things.
Absolutely. And, for greenfield sites that are coming into the area, I mean, there's tax incentives for that. That would be your agency that would handle that more than likely. They are going to be that direct line of communication for you to work all that out. And then with your tech colleges and all of that to also provide training in that capacity. And that's a different set, that's kind of a different pot of funding.
Yeah.
So all of that good stuff. And then they'll help you promote your events. And, of course, they'll help you kind of decide whether or not if that's the area that you want to be in, if they have the workforce that can sustain what you're doing. It's a very valuable resource.
Absolutely. I know like kind of a small thing, but a huge thing for me was like resume building. Well, the ours had like a resume building program, and you go in there and it'd be like a resume building workshop. Yeah. And like, well, and so like just being able to have somebody like kind of guide you through the process, because like now I could write a resume if I needed to, but like, that's just because my experience level is like, okay, I just put down on paper like the things that I've done and I know it'll work out. And also having the lens of being a business owner helps out a lot too. But man, like when it came to like writing a resume, like that was such a roadblock. It's such a like paralyzing thing for me. Like I'd like set down, like it wouldn't be a notebook, but set down the notebook and like, sit there and stare at it for a minute. And yeah, so like having that guidance like was extremely helpful.
So many candidates reach out to me and they want me to look at their resume. And I think, it's like, there's not like, it's not like you're writing like, what did we have to write in school and you had to do like the works cited and all that. Like, there's not like a like specific
template or something.
Black and white. It's not like super like this is what you do. But most of the time, I mean, they end up sending it to me and I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with it? I think we just kind of psych ourselves out, right? Or maybe it's even like digging into a level of like imposter syndrome. You're like, did I do that? Can I put that on my resume? Absolutely. The answer is yes. The answer is always yes.
Yeah. No, I like that. Somebody else mentioned like the imposter syndrome thing, and like this kind of goes into like my like what I was diving into before with the way that I dropped out of high school, got a GED, did a community college, right? So like there's like a side that's like the imposter syndrome, where it's like just kind of an insecurity of like, did I do those things, or are these things worthy enough to put on a resume? Like, and so like that imposter syndrome is so huge on like people's psychology on like, I don't know whether they find it valuable, or I think the big part is truth, right? Like I'm a big individual on like truth. And if I feel like anything is like a lie or like skewed from the truth, it's hard for me to like say it, or I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. It does. I'm recovering from imposter syndrome myself. I'm like, yes, I did. I did do that. Yes, I did. I was there for that. Yes. So I get it.
Huh. One of the big things that I think like now that like makes some, like if I was to go back to employee and have to like write a resume, like one of the things I think that's easier for me is like kind of like the math side of things. Like I programmed Allen Bradley PLC for 4 years, 5 years, whatever the time frame is. I programmed Fanuc robots for X amount of times doing this type of applications. So like it's a little bit more like black and white. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit more black and white in the mind, as far as like, here's what I did, here's how long I did it, here was the type of applications it was with.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And that's really what you're looking for, right? You're looking for um, what you've done. Um, I don't know. I think some people call that like a deliverable or something,
Right.
but it's what you've accomplished,
Yep.
how you accomplished it, and if you can get a result squeezed in there somewhere, that's the key. That's the formula. It's gold.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because like most, I would say most people they care about the accomplishment. Especially, I feel like smaller companies, like when you're dealing with the founder, they care more about like what is XYZ thing that you did versus, maybe in some bigger companies, and you're probably much better off at having insights on this, but like maybe bigger companies are care a little bit more about like, I don't know, some of the more human resources side of things. Like I did, like let's say for like ex volunteer work, or I don't know, maybe you can kind of elaborate on what you kind of see market wise as far as that goes.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, during an interview, and that's another thing that I think is super intimidating that isn't really supposed to be. It's more about assessing what skills you currently have and what skills, would you have to train somebody to achieve, basically. Um, and then how you kind of conduct yourself, and that really depends on, goes back to like soft skills, right? So that kind of really depends on what your role is in the company, but of course, team skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills, those are gonna be mandatory
Yeah.
at this point, especially as we move forward with technology. In manufacturing, we're going to see a lot more need to collaborate, and how we collaborate is changing too.
No, absolutely.
Um, yeah, but really, if you're coming in as a controls programmer, engineer, there's going to be a specific programming that we already use, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to hope that you have that, and I'm going to call you because that was already on your resume.
Yeah.
But kind of walking through what applications you've used that for and
Mhm.
what environments you've worked in the past using that same programming language. That's going to be really key.
Do do you see many people like doing like adaptive resumes where like when they submit a resume to different potential employers that they shift around the resume a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, I think it depends on what role you're applying for in the
Yeah.
company. You see that a lot in kind of that upper level towards C-suite
Mhm. Yeah.
capacity, not as much on kind of the frontline workforce,
Yeah. Yeah,
even
I
in
can definitely.
engineering. But it's, you can definitely do that.
Yeah. For me personally, like what I see is I probably agree that it doesn't occur, right? People are not adapting their resumes. And I think for, like you said, a lot of positions, it doesn't matter, right? If you're going to be an operator or, maybe like even if you go like CNC machines, it depends on like what you're really trying to accomplish. Like if you're trying to like make a shift to like make more money or something like that, then I think the investment into the resume is probably makes sense. Like let's say for instance, like even if you go CNC machinist and you have experience with a bunch of different materials and you're applying for a position and you know that they do like a lot of food industry, so they're doing like a lot of stainless steel, right? And so if you can like highlight that like I've machined stainless steel on your resume and kind of list that as like the major thing that you do, then like that can kind of like, oh, okay, like and immediately kind of trigger that employer to dig deeper.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely seen cases in that before, with that specific example, actually.
Really?
So yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
And the great thing about the metals industry is it's a pretty good industry to be in. So that's something, if you're coming from outside that industry, maybe you work for like a supplier, something like that, OEM, and you're interested in kind of moving up in your career and advancing your skill sets, because when you get into metals, it's a little bit more technically involved, and machinery is a lot bigger, and there is a whole process depending on
Yeah.
depending on the plant and everything, and what the end product
Yeah.
is. But an operator that works, for an OEM supplier is not is gonna, is not gonna make as much as an operator that works for like a steel manufacturer,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And like certain opportunities is like, I mean, like maybe if like you're going to work at like a Toyota, I could see like you would get hired in at not entry level and can find some way to maybe get like $1 or $2 extra if you came from like, working on the line at GM or something like that. And so you're transitioning from like GM to Toyota, Toyota to GM, where it's like very specific. Which I mean, realistically, you're probably already going to have that listed in your resume as well. And really, what part of what made me bring this topic up in general is because like a lot of times when it comes to like a controls engineer, like we hire based on like a specific need, right? And so like if I have a listing that says hiring Allen Bradley PLC programmer, and like, they have like Toya Puck, Siemens, and it's like at the very bottom of the list is like Allen Bradley. It's like, like if
right.
they would have just shifted that around and just even put Allen Bradley at the top, even if it wasn't the most recent, like just done something to where it's like in the eyes of the viewer, they would immediately became more entertaining as a potential candidate.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when you see that, it's like, okay. So, it makes you stop and question. You're like, okay, I see that you got a little bit there, but then, you've got to go kind of further and dig like, okay, how much of this do you have versus uh, the other programming languages, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that position.
What are some things on the as far as the resume aspect, or have you seen anything that kind of helps with individuals getting positions more than others?
I think basically, I mean, that Alan Bradley example you just gave is pretty on point with that.
Yeah.
I mean, the more specific, especially like what I would consider those hard skill sets, right? So like
Yeah.
your hands-on experience, if you're hands-on with Siemens or Allen Bradley or whatever ignition, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
And if you have that experience and then you can
Mhm.
demonstrate that experience in the interview, however, the employer or the client, however they proceed with their interview process to determine that, then I think that's a good. That's where you want to be. That's going to give you the best chances of being considered for that role.
One of the other things so the platform is one, and then like another thing would be the process, right? So let's say, for instance, like you could say Allen Bradley, but was it like palletizing applications? Was it packaging machinery? Was it, like what type of equipment were you dealing with? Was it just conveyors? Was it distribution center? A lot of these things are very important, and like you can take that same thing into like a CNC machine shop. Are we talking about a 1 inch by 1 inch part that you're machining, or are we talking about a 20 foot by 20 foot part that you're machining? Like a lot of these are like key differences that could potentially like be like the reason.
Absolutely. And that's something, that I think goes under the radar as well, that, specific industry difference. And that's it. That kind of gets into a really feel like that kind of gets into my philosophical realm there, Malachi. But you just think about the shortage, the skills gap shortage that we have, and then you think about industry specifics, right? Which are important. I'm not saying they're not, but we have to figure out how to like a better way to tweak that gap a little bit. I think it can be done.
Got you.
You know what I mean? Because I do think people get hung up on that a little much, I think, sometimes.
Are you saying like transitioning from one thing to another?
Mm-hmm.
Got you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I mean, like say for instance, for us, like whenever we're having customer meetings, we're essentially being interviewed every single customer meeting. It's like, well, what type of applications do you guys do? Which is that exact same thing that employers are asking the employee in a sense. And closing that gap. Don't get me wrong. I think that it is good to be an expert at whatever it is that you do, right? But also at some level, after like a company can gain so much skill and have a level of engineering team or whatever, right? Like their thing is that at some point, like all the things become relatively the same, right? So for us, like if we were to say material handling, it's on an application to application basis, whether it's something that we feel is complex. You might look at this and say, this is a nightmare. We might look at it and say, oh no, we got the solution for you, but everybody else is like scared of it. They don't want to touch it, but like, maybe it's because like their mind's not thinking of it in a certain way. I posted a video, I think last night, and we did a customer on-site visit yesterday. And basically the customer said, hey, there's been 3 automation companies in here. Every one of them came in here, basically laughed at the situation and said, there's no way we can automate this. Right. And so we spent a good, like, at least probably a couple of hours with them. Right. And just like in their facility, looking at their process and kind of brainstorming with them and going through their different SKUs and things like that. And came up with a solution that would help them. But so I guess point being with this is, right, that the skill doesn't have to be absolutely 101% directly related. This particular customer, have we done this exact automation application? No, we haven't. I don't think anybody's done this exact automation application, but so it's like you have to be a little bit more open to like what skills are very transferable versus like what skills are not.
Exactly. That's the key word, really finding those transferable skills and having the patience, to really see the transferable skills for what they are and be able to develop an employee. I mean, listen, like in this jobs market, it's going to be pretty rare that you get the person that's, like perfect for the role. You're going to invest a little bit of time developing this person. Yeah, that's a given at this point, and just being a little bit more flexible in that. And a lot of companies are there. I've got a lot of great clients that do.
Yeah. I think also like that onboarding training process of like, okay, cool. They brought in somebody maybe that has like a side tangent skill. But like how they bring them into the company and how they get them acclimated to like equipment processes, things like that is like you said, is very, very important.
Exactly.
I've definitely, for me personally, like I mean, I have not had a ton of different jobs. Like I've only had actually only a couple jobs my entire life. But like one of the things that I like was constantly thrown into was like me just having to figure something out, right? So everything was like a major learning curve that I had to do, right? There wasn't somebody to show me how to do the thing. And a lot of these like bigger companies, like they should have processes in place where, if when we hire X person, he goes and hangs out with Billy Joe for 3 weeks, a month, whatever they can do to kind of get him up to speed and kind of shorten that person's curve to the processes.
I will tell you that brings up another point. So I will tell you that I just finished up a retention study
Mm,
for a large scale manufacturing company, and they had a very specific training process like that.
mm,
And some of the best feedback I got in doing that study was about that training process.
really?
They really felt the employees really felt like they were invested in, that they were cared for during that time,
Mm,
that they learned a lot from the company, that they learned a lot of transferable skills from the
mm,
company. So that seemed to really be a hit with them, and I think
yeah.
that's important. Yeah, getting acclimated to your environment.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I like the way you brought that up and mentioned that shows like on a cultural level, like the employee's appreciation for that employer.
Exactly, and
That,
that's that was all frontline workforce. That was coming from your frontline workforce.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, absolutely. Like so, like companies that because when you say culture, like I like to talk culture a lot. When you say culture, it can become hard. It's like it can be one of those things. It's like, well, how do we build culture, right? And so things like that are like key indicators. If you can find other scenarios of like, hey, this got a positive feedback from like work studies and things like that that say, you know, XYZ employees appreciated their employer more if X happens, if they do a process like this. So like this onboarding and training process is like perfect example of building the culture.
absolutely, and having a level of consistency. Anytime I think we take that for granted. I think that sometimes we take the it's sometimes I think we get so comfortable as leaders. If we've been doing the same thing over and over, and this could be, your hiring manager, or this could, I could be talking about myself here, really and truly. But we get so comfortable in what we're doing that it becomes so second nature that we forget that at one point we learned this too.
Yeah,
And not taking or giving the space to understand the level of consistency that
yep,
it took you to get
absolutely,
here. you know
absolutely.
you got to offer
Yeah,
that to other people.
a lot of times like this is definitely one of the things like I'll struggle with like especially if I put somebody in a leadership role. I'm like, okay, hey, here's this thing, I'm giving it to you, this is your thing now. And I also like trying to like structure our company in a way where it doesn't need me, right? And so like people will come to me and say, hey, like what should I do about X? And I'm like, I don't know, that's your department, you figure it out. So definitely have to be careful on like how much like I go about doing it like that, because then you also create the, oh, my boss never helps me, I'm always by myself, I don't ever have any support, things like that. So um creating that like ecosystem where you have like that fine balance, like if I need to do like that, right, if I do need to operate like that, and I probably operate more aggressively in that nature because I want our growth to be extremely quick and trying to streamline things. So there's going to be more frustrations with that process, and that's also something that we have to be aware of as well.
Yeah, I think that, I think when you hear these terms like leading with empathy, and like, all the kind of cultural corporate jargon sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That I think that's a good example
Yeah.
of what that looks like for sure.
I agree. What are some of the soft skills that have been the most prominent for people getting positions?
Communication and the ability to communicate is huge. Communicate across an organization,
Gotcha.
so across departments, you
Gotcha.
know, parallel and like up and down, like laterally and vertically.
Gotcha. What are
effectively.
effectively? What are, I guess, could you potentially give some examples of like what that may look like or sound like on a resume?
Worked with shipping department for XYZ, worked with production planning crew for, number of parts produced, worked with contractors like project engineers a lot,
Gotcha.
gonna have to work with contractors, facilitated conversations, did the planning, all that, and then worked back with plant management, worked with HR to establish and assess staffing needs.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like that one's a pretty like interesting one, or one that I'm interested in, because like it's on paper, it's one of the harder ones for me to like put down on paper, like communication skills. Like, okay, like I'm not very good soft skill individual. And I'm very much like very engineering and like I'm not gonna say I'm not good at soft skills. I'm not good at putting like the soft skills on paper is the part that I'm not good at, right? Like I actually we're gonna have a video coming out where it's basically I just had my worst customer meeting ever, right? And so like the whole thing with this one is like it also dives into like after you've been doing something for so long that like you just kind of take things for granted. Um and so that like that's really what it dives into is like the it's almost like you're so good at the process that you forget to explain to people like how the process works, or like in this particular scenario, it was like, how are we helping the customer out? It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're gonna give you guys ROI. We're gonna, labor shortages, like all the key words, right? But I think like sometimes like you can become like, I don't want to say like so much of an expert at what you do, but like you kind of almost lose sight of the smaller details, the trigger words that people want to hear.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah, so I think it's like important for people to be able to like find a way to like talk, like something like soft skills, right? That's kind of where that stemmed from, is like soft skills on paper would be hard for me to write down. But like if I get to talking with somebody and then the conversation opens up, then it's like, oh, okay, this guy obviously he can communicate. I mean, he's like, on paper, like I operated a company now, so like being able to operate a company in itself like says like these soft skills of being able to manage X people, da 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 da. But I think those can also be very difficult for somebody to put down on pieces of paper.
It's very hard. Soft skills are very hard to not only identify but also communicate effectively. I usually, I mean, my go-to advice for individuals that are looking for a new job, my go-to advice is generally to focus more on hard skill sets on your resume, because that's really going to get you called. And then find a way to convey those hard skills with your soft skills in the interview. So, well, you said that you worked with, multiple vendors and contractors, third parties, whatever, what was the end result of that? And what was the process that you took to lead to that result? And that's really kind of where you can go back and, explain during the interview. Well, this was a very specific example during that time period where I had to overcome some sort of, maybe it's a purchasing issue or whatever, and I had to, directly coordinate with the purchasing manager and resolve the issue, and communicate that information back to the contractor, vendor, and all of that.
Gotcha. Are you aware of anything that gives you like a list of like keywords or terms that would like, maybe you just look at Google like soft skill like terms, like I'm thinking like able to solve or figured this out, or coordinated with, like, so like I think a lot of those words are demonstrate the whatever the next thing is, right, is that soft skill that you were able to do. but then the first part of that, whatever that word is like the executable part of like what it is that you did.
Like the verbiage, right?
Yep.
I don't know if there's a specific list for verbiage in that capacity. I know that there are multiple lists that you can find of soft skills. I had to do a lot of research for that. That's part of the workforce development program is two classes in soft skills development. So I've done a lot of research. I've found a lot of lists of highly desirable soft skills. I found some great YouTube videos out there kind of demonstrating real life examples of soft skills. I found some really good ones that are just funny. It's educational in the terms that it's like what not to do. But there's a couple of really good videos that some super creative folks have put together of like from Step Brothers. You remember that scene where they're like where they're interviewing for a job and then take each other with them. And it's like what not to do in an interview. So there's some really good content out there that's also very educational, but far more entertaining than
yeah,
XYZ, do XYZ or whatever. But there's all kinds of resources out there for soft skills development.
Gotcha. As of right now, I guess you could dive in a little bit to like your current processes. What do you currently have going on in your company and kind of the direction you're going?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. So yeah, I'm actively recruiting. I am. I'll be starting some new search requests here in the next couple of weeks, and I'm also kind of working more to develop this retention study aspect. I think that's, I've had some really good conversations on LinkedIn lately about retention versus recruiting and kind of the difference. And, is it because we are putting so much emphasis on recruiting, right? And we're putting so much emphasis on the skills gap, really, is it recruiting or is it retention? And kind of separating the two. I really want to kind of get further into that. And then creatively, I love doing Workforce 4.0. It's been so much fun. I know you were a guest, and that was just a lot of fun to do that. And I think it's good for the community, to reach out and support each other and give each other a voice and talk about workforce and technology and all the cool stuff. So I'm planning on doing the official season 3, because Workforce 4.0 hometown was kind of just very local to North Alabama. But working on developing that into a full-on podcast and seeing where that goes.
Nice. Are you? This is kind of like a side tangent question. Are you doing seasons because it's like you can have breaks in between, or what's the season thing?
I'm doing seasons because I do need, I'm thinking, and then, I'm a big, I don't know, do you Netflix? Are you a Netflix person? You like Netflix?
Yeah, probably. It's like my one
when you can.
Yeah, it's like my one getaway. Like whenever I want to act like, or not act like, whenever I just want to get away from what my actual life is, I'll go put on like a ninja movie or something.
Yeah. Like when I want to check out for a while, like right now, what am I watching? This show called Firefly Lane. I don't know if anybody watches it out there, but after I come off like a huge run, that's really kind of my nature. And
watch movies.
Well, my nature is to just go hard for a while.
Oh, gotcha.
Decompress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm coming off like a huge, like multiple project, or whatever, and I just need to like come back to center.
Sure.
I think I Netflix, but they break down into like 8 episodes. I think that's kind of where I got the original idea. But I'm thinking, it's a little bit more manageable, and I
Yeah.
like having that space in between so that I can have more certainty in the types of conversations I want to have, if that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I like very, very big into like strategy. I'm like, that's where my like head operates at the most. And so like I'm not extremely creative, which is why we have a team for it. But on the strategy side of things, like I'm always analyzing. And I think like what you're doing on the season thing, one thing that's super good about the season type of structure is one, it gives you the ability to take a break. It gives you the ability to kind of shift the narrative of your episodes, right? Like if season 4 comes out, like you have different titles to do your different seasons, right? So like each one of those seasons kind of has its own like flavor to it, right? So it gives you that. And then also the consumability. I think that definitely as a viewer of content, people are like, oh, okay, I can watch through season 1. Okay, cool. I've watched season 1. Oh, okay, cool. I've watched season 2. Um, Whereas like on the other side, if you're just like cranking out content, at some point you're like, dude, I can never keep up with these episodes. Like, why would I
Right.
try? Like, yeah. So like I think that there's definitely some benefit on the in doing season type of episodes. Side tangent there, but
No, I think we're already kind of predispositioned to that because of things like the Netflix and the Hulu and I mean, even back
yeah,
before we had all that. I mean, like
there's still
like
seasons. Yeah.
I remember my mother. She was so funny. But she was a big George Clooney fan, because he's from Kentucky and all that mess. But I remember my mother just being so over the top when a new season of ER would come on. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
She I mean, it was a thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a thing. It was something to look forward
Absolutely.
to.
I think my
Yeah,
grandma. I think my grandma recorded them all on VHS.
that's awesome.
So, where can people find you at?
Yeah, that's a great question. LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me, because I love it. I love our community over there, don't
Yeah,
you?
absolutely.
Some great folks, and if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just reach out, send me a DM. Yeah, I'm pretty responsive there. Otherwise, I do have a website. It's annwyattrecruiting.com. And that tells you kind of more about what our service is, what I can offer you as a company or as a candidate. I have an entire resource library too that I've been working on building out over the past couple
Mm,
of years. So I have like templates and stuff, all that cool stuff, and a job board. And otherwise, that's probably the two best ways. I'm on all social, A Wyatt Recruits.
gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you on the LinkedIn thing. Like, we're across all platforms, but if LinkedIn went away, I don't know what I'd do. I don't use any other social platform really.
I would cry. I would have to give up, I guess, and go back on over to Twitter, or which I'm Twitter's been a lot of fun to watch lately. Which I don't really
Oh yeah,
have a dog in that fight, so it's just fun to watch. But
yeah,
right, but it's so hard to like. Yeah, I don't like their DMs as much. I don't know.
yeah,
I like LinkedIn, and I like the you kind of never know what you're going to get in other platforms. Like on LinkedIn, I'm like, I can get on LinkedIn and expect my feed to be full of
yeah,
kind of high level conversations, and that's
yeah.
really I like all that
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, I think anybody who's like career driven and or interested in careers and just like being in that space, I think LinkedIn is just the place for that conversation to be had. I I have a prediction though that if LinkedIn's not careful, I think somebody else is going to come in primarily because if LinkedIn becomes more of a Facebook and like you just get everything content, then it's going to create a gap in the market again for somebody else to come out with something that is strictly career, professional. I think that's one thing people like about LinkedIn. Like they like being personal. You see more personality now on LinkedIn than ever before. Like I really started on LinkedIn like 3 years ago, and even then, like people were like direct messaging me like, take these posts down. This post is not for this, and like wasn't even like super personal or anything. And I'm like, okay, Sally Sue, like whatever.
Like, okay, Becky, calm down.
Yeah, okay, Becky. Yeah. But yet it's kind of weird because like let's say being a victim of that, right? I personally like the professionalism of LinkedIn, and I hope that it never loses its professionalism. It's one of the main things I like about the platform.
How do you, so that kind of, can I ask a question? Can I ask a
Sure,
question?
ask some questions.
Okay. How, have you seen that? Like, do you feel that way? Because to the best, I won't say too much, but to the best of my knowledge, LinkedIn goes out of their way to prevent that from happening. Do you feel like it's
Yeah.
more like a Facebook, or
Yeah, so it's
it's
definitely it's definitely still way off from a Facebook. It's definitely not, Facebook-y, right? But what I can say is like if you was like rated on professionalism 3 years ago to professionalism now, there's been a dramatic drop. I would almost say like maybe 50%. I think it's pretty big. Like I mean, and my, maybe my memory could be skewed, but like 3 years ago, like I don't really recall that many people posting selfies. Or if they were posting a selfie, it was like on the job site doing something, or like at least that's my recollection of what I used to see a lot on LinkedIn. And now you see just like more pictures of like people's dogs and like just personal related things, right? That's kind of like the biggest transition I see.
Yeah, I do see that. I guess, because I post some about Phoenix on there because, I can't help it. I think that's part of,
Yeah.
the whole mom situation.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important. I'll give you guys a LinkedIn tip if you want it. I do think that it's important if you're going to post content like that, like personal content like that, to make sure that the text of your post make sure it kind of relates back. So I know, like, I think the last picture I posted of Phoenix and I was when he was home, he had staff. Oh, poor child. But I had him home from school and I was
Yeah.
working and all that. But the real point of the post was basically to demonstrate, being a single mom, what work-life balance has to look like
Yeah.
to some
Yeah.
degree, right? There is no other, person right here, right? It's
Yeah.
me.
Right.
So when your child is sick, and you have, your kids are adorable, by the way.
Well, thank you.
When your child is sick, guess who's taking off,
Yeah.
so what work-life balance, if we're going to attract a more diverse workforce in manufacturing,
Mhm.
what that balance has to allot for,
Yeah.
because right now it's like one or the other.
Yep.
And we don't have the workforce to sustain one or the other.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
And like the big thing is there, like the key point that you pointed out, and that is like one of the things that I kind of make it a must for myself personally, is like you in the copy, you made it relate back. Right. And so like,
Exactly.
that's one of my minimum requirements. Like I'll post something with the kids. Sometimes it's like a cute thing. I think I posted like some things and they're wearing like hard hats and they put the jackets on and maybe I'll be like future engineers or future, whatever, right? And so like there's still a portion of that kind of like ties back. I always just make sure there's at least some bit of that's like either work-life balance or parenting life with work somehow, or just like so many different things like that, right? I think it for me is a personal thing. But I don't really care what anybody does ever. I'm just that type of individual. Like, you would do whatever you want to do, man. Like, I'm
Me
very
too.
open minded to, cool. As long as your stuff isn't in my Kool-Aid, I'm okay. But me personally, like say for instance, and I think you kind of are thinking in the same way of like with LinkedIn, it's like, let's somehow like keep this in a professional way where like I can post the personal things, but I can also add some aspect of like profession to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, I think that the personal posts too, though, they make you human
Yeah.
too. I mean, it's like, like in the before times, you couldn't really. I've been on LinkedIn since 2012, and it was very lonely. And I'm very excited about the growth LinkedIn has had in the
Yeah.
community that we've got going on, because it was back in the dark ages, so it was a lot slower.
Yeah,
Um,
you definitely know like than like LinkedIn and like in its more original days of like if you posted something that was like off kilter at all, like people were
it was
like,
stuffy.
yeah, yeah, they're like people be in the comments, get off of LinkedIn if you're gonna be posting stuff like this, like.
Right, they came for you. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was really stuffy. But I think so. That's what I'm saying. I think that you can post the personal post.
yeah,
Does it need to be every single post? No. You need to try to have a very diverse, robust
hmm,
LinkedIn strategy. So I'll post, educational. I try to post like educational stuff, or like, knowledge sharing
hmm,
content, which is, mainly if I'm posting like on Workforce Wednesday, that's
hmm,
a great example of that, right? I want to share the good vibes
yep,
of what, the manufacturing workforce is up to. And then other days I'll post about, maybe um, I don't know, recruitment strategy, or candidate strategy, client strategy, being kind of specific with that, and try to share the information that I've learned along the way. And I love that about LinkedIn. I learn so much from everybody, and hope that I can match that energy, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think everybody, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Go check us out. LinkedIn is super powerful. Anybody who's like, if you're just now about to get into college, like get on LinkedIn, like start exploring what's going on. Um, Start learning the space, and also start posting content. Don't just get a LinkedIn and just explore, but post some things, right? Like if you're in your lecture, if you learn something in one of your things, like in one of your classes, like post that up. Like employers will potentially see that, right? And you might be the guy that gets the job because they've been seeing you on LinkedIn for a couple of years.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of the candidate advice I give too. I mean, if you're out there looking for a new opportunity, like I want to see it. See
Yeah.
it. Tag me in it. I'll blow up your post for you. I don't care. I want everybody to see
Yeah.
that, yes, you are working on these projects, and you are a rock star, and you know what, you deserve
Yeah.
a better paying job, or one that's going to bring you more work life balance, or whatever. Yeah.
101%. 101. Okay. What last valuable tips do you have for the community before we get out of here today?
Oh gosh. Don't don't be afraid to be, you know kind of yourself, and
Absolutely.
don't especially when it comes to, like, you know posting, or reaching out, or whatever. Just make make some good connections,
Mhm.
and you know um don't be afraid to start a conversation, or engage in a conversation.
Yeah.
That that's some good LinkedIn advice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Build connections. Don't be scared to reach out. I'm one of those guys that's still scared to reach out. I don't even like. I don't know what it is. But something about me. I'll get in the comments, but like DMing people, I don't know. I'm like introverted. I'm like, I don't know. But
I
yeah.
know. I had to get over. I had to get over it, Malachi. I had to.
Absolutely. And thank you for being with us here today. I think some bombs were definitely dropped. some super valuable information for everybody getting into their career and who are already in their career.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I love it. I love that you're doing this, and keep up the good work, and keep posting amazing content.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you, Ann.
Bye.